All right. Welcome back to Infinity Outdoors Timeless Memories. Back here with Cam this time.
Been a little minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute, dude.
Started working.
To hell with that.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. Well, until it quits paying my bills, I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So I think it's a good idea to talk about our initial endeavor into the fly fishing world, dude.
Our valiant attempt.
Yeah. I mean, it was something that, both interested us, and I happened to have been lucky, and my dad had an old fly rod, and we went and found just like a cheap starter one for you to use.
So I got it's a Shakespeare Cedar Canyon.
Yeah.
Something. It was $90 for the
Right.
entirety of it, which
And then
realistically is
is
not. Yeah, you did go out of your way.
And I spent I can't even tell you how much on flies alone, and got myself a pair of fucking Sims fishing waders.
And boots.
Yeah, and the boots to go with it.
I wore a pair of Cabela's, like the standard Cabela's duck waders.
Yeah.
And I also didn't fall on my ass right as soon as we got there.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so we got done at this fly shop because we were looking just for like a cheap net. And so we found one and we got it to take with us on the river. And it was me, Cameron, and Aiden. Aiden was actually there with us. And we get parked and we get, dressed out, and we were walking down to the little, I guess, it's not really a launch, but I guess you'd call it like a kayak launch.
You could,
a
yeah.
launch of sorts. So I got to take one step, and I stepped on like the little log that's right there that separates the gravel from the actual water. And yeah, I ate shit. I mean, flat
sentence.
ass ate shit.
Mid sentence. And no, this is why it was funny to me. I was still, not severely, but I was still a little hungover.
Yeah.
I was like sweating on my way up. I'm like, I don't even want to be here. And
Yes,
watching you fall, I was like, you know what?
I want to be here.
I'm not gonna have the worst time here, more than likely. I can manage. But no, we walked a decent. After that, we fished that first.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that first
100-yard
spot we went?
stretch was pretty easily fishable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really didn't start getting, I guess, difficult until we got around that first bend.
Yeah.
Or no, that second bend. Because it, kind of S-curved a little bit. But after we got past that second bend, to clarify, we went and fished the fly only section of the Au Sable River. The Au Sable River, that's a tongue twister.
It's not.
Up in Grayling.
We're about, not even 3 miles outside of Grayling?
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Say.
Yeah.
But the guy at the fly shop told us, kind of gave us an idea.
Yeah.
Kind of just told him,
everything.
we don't know what we're doing. We're just going to go try. He said, all right, try here.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I feel like our biggest worry was our casting.
Oh, yeah.
And
I showed up.
That literally was the easiest part.
I showed up
in the water.
having a general idea.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I know, I'm casting. I can see where I'm going wrong.
Yeah.
But actually being in the water, you get a little more practice than just standing on, the island out here. And was good for the first half hour. And then the next 45-minute stretch, I couldn't remember how to cast. It was like I didn't know. I couldn't figure it out.
The mechanics?
I did. Because there were a couple spots. Because Aiden at one point said, he's like, I think I just saw a fish right there. I was like, I can cast at that. And it's an open spot. And I went to cast at it 3 times. Did it good once. And then went to cast at it again. And I'm like, just throwing it short. I'm spooling my whole thing in one little pile.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on? And then I did that for the next 20 minutes. Consistently. Out of 5 casts, I would get one good one.
Right.
And then probably the second half, I was like, okay, started to rein it back in. And then by the time we went to the other area, I was like, I'm a natural at this. I know,
natural at this.
I was getting it exactly where I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why couldn't I do that when we were in the first stretch where we were like, well, looks like there could be a fish there. Not that I could cast to it.
Right.
But
I honestly think the more difficult part was, I guess, trying to understand where to throw your presentation at, and of course how to work it, because for a little part there, I know Aiden threw a streamer the whole time. Did you throw a streamer the whole time?
I started with the dry fly that I had on,
That's right.
and then I went to
Yeah.
a black woolly bugger.
Right. So, because I threw a streamer right there, like towards the end of it, and that was like a black woolly bugger leech of some sort. But I started with one of those like I don't know exactly what you would call it. I think it was a caddis nymph. Um, but even trying to find like how to throw into a specific drift to get that to because those little nymphs like when they're coming off the stones on the bottom, they're right above those stones. Like they're
Right.
in the slow water down there at the depths. So and I think after throwing it and feeling how it was drifting, I'm pretty sure I found out that some of my flies, if not most of them, are not heavy enough to get down there. And the sad part about it is to have those nymphs to be heavy enough, you have to tie them yourself.
Right.
Because they don't manufacture nymphs or those little like wet flies like that heavy. And I mean, most of the time, the stuff that comes from factory is heavy enough. But I mean, for
Well,
some
the
of those,
water was moving
yeah, but some of those
relatively
stretches
quick. It
that
was
we
still
hit,
early.
yeah,
And the guy even said there might be a couple spots where it's shallow and a little slower, and then there might be some spots where it's faster than usual. But the wind started blowing
right, yeah,
and everything like that. And for it being our first time, like it was all figuring it out because we were walking. I don't know every other spot we looked at. We're like, oh, I could throw a spinner right there. I guarantee I could.
yeah,
I guarantee I know how to fish it with the spinner. But that was my, I guess, disadvantage is everything I was throwing at, I was throwing the way you would throw a spinner.
right,
You throw it, back away from it and drag it right through. Your fly's drifting a lot more than a spinner is.
yeah,
And you don't have as much control of your fly, or, not yet at least.
right.
So there's a dock or something on the side of the water, and you're trying to like skip a spinner under it. And
I saw
like,
Aiden one time like throw his streamer right at the dock and like try to get it to float in there and strip it out of there. It was like, man, it's almost like he's working a soft plastic like he would with bass, like underneath the dock.
oh, there was a little spot. There was a spot right before. I think probably we're talking about the same dock where you guys stopped to get like a drink and change flies.
Oh yeah,
There were some pine branches hanging down, and I'm like trying to sidearm my fly in there, and like I got close once. I was like, oh, I could easily do that again, and that was like,
shit,
yeah, that's exactly what I was like, dude. I know how to do this.
dude,
Easy.
I know.
And then I'd pull it back to do it again, and I'd like miss by like 10 feet to the left. I'm like, I need to move on. And then that was right before that deep corner
Yeah,
that I almost lost my fly in and just about went over my waders to get. And because, same thing, spinner, you can kind of give it a little more. You can pull straight back. Sometimes it'll come right out of there.
yeah.
With bass fishing, it's a tube. You just start yanking on it, or like using braid or anything. You're gonna whatever you're hooked into, unless it's a log or anything, you're gonna be able to at least get a little bit. And that fly, I started pulling on it, and I just saw my rod just do one of these. I was like, I can't do that here.
Yeah.
Then sure enough, I walked right up to it and sitting there fighting it, and I realized how deep of water I was in, so I started backing up, and I went like pulled it straight back once, popped right off. I was like, dude.
I mean, most of the time, those flies, like with the small hooks they got, and I found out a lot of my flies are actually barbless. So, I mean, if you just get enough of that just forward momentum to push them that opposite direction, they'll just fall right off whatever you hooked on. But how many fucking trees or limbs did I catch?
All of them.
I was about to say, I feel like I caught so many. It was ridiculous.
The only thing that anybody, I guess, pulled in was that one stick that you caught.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, we saw fish.
Yeah,
the whole
so,
time.
I mean...
And they were just like, we would step on one, like almost step on one, and they would like just shoot out.
Yeah, the second section we did when we went down the river quite a ways, it's a lot shallower, which the guy did at the fly shop told us.
Yeah.
And where I ended up, I walked, 50 yards farther than you guys did, probably. When I got up to there, it was a, like, patch of grass in the middle. And then there was kind of a mucky, dark run on one side, and then the other side was all, like, sand and...
Right.
Sand and gravel and everything like that. And I was casting more to the sand and gravel, And then right as soon as you guys were like, okay, Aiden hit a hole in his waders, weren't getting luck. It was wind was starting to pick up, so it was, starting to die down.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the one time I saw a fish. And it
Yeah.
was the same thing. Like I was reeling in and I like stepped on a branch that was like 2 steps away from me that I was standing at for probably 20 minutes.
Right.
Never saw anything when I was actually casting, but the second I stepped on it, yeah, I just saw one leave, and I was
Mm.
like, "That's
So I'm pretty
it's still
sure
trout
all
fishing."
three of us spotted fish,
Yeah,
right?
at least one,
Yeah,
I would
at least
say.
once.
I think Aiden saw. I know Aiden saw one early
Like
on,
right at the beginning, and
and
that made
then
me feel good because I was like, man, if he's seeing fish right now, they're at least here.
right.
Like they've swam up this far. So no, we need to do that again.
It was fun. I thought I honestly like the whole highlight of that trip for me was watching the mink.
Dude, yeah,
Like what just
there were like two or three of them that were like just
in the first
playing
that
the
it was
grab
it
ass
it
right
was
there
in
on
the
the bank.
first that 100-yard stretch.
Yeah.
There was a log that came out about probably 20, 30 feet into the water.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw one right there run up the shore and then out of the sticks on the bottom right where the water meets the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden we just heard a splash and there was another one. I never saw where the other one came from.
Yeah, it was just
And
there.
they were just going at it. And then the
Yeah.
one walked down the log and I was only 15 feet from it, I think. And he just didn't care. He just walked down the log and was hanging out at the end of the log. And I was like, this is the coolest part of this trip for me so far. Like I don't want to say like I don't care if I catch fish because
I mean,
that's always
honestly,
hindsight.
though, I
But
don't think we really were.
we
I
were
mean,
not going
it would have been cool to catch a fish, but I feel like we were there to like more or less
try.
try to learn the mechanics of how to fly fish in that sense. But I mean, I feel like we learned a lot,
Well,
being out there and actually trying to put that stuff like to the test out there.
what did the guy tell us when we were going? You don't go fly fishing if you want to catch fish, just like you
Yeah.
don't go bow hunting if you want to shoot deer.
But I think that's ridiculous because I feel like I've had way better encounters and way more encounters bow hunting than I have ever had rifle hunting.
Yeah.
And I feel like it may even be the same case when it comes to fly fishing if you're in the right part of the season. Like if you're fishing the right part of the season. Because when he said that, I was like, that can't be true because then why would anybody fly fish to begin with? If you're not going to catch fish, why would you even do it?
Well, he said that too. He's like, you're not going to catch nearly as many, and that's kind of the way he put it. With the like bow hunting versus rifle hunting. He's like, you can shoot a deer with a rifle up to however far you
Right.
want, so you have more opportunity to do it. You have more, like.
I mean, I get that part.
But when
It
he
like
was
the way he said it.
the
I
way
was
he
like,
said it
dude.
was like, but it was more like a when you catch a fish when you're fly fishing, then it doesn't matter because like it just makes that experience that much better.
Right.
Because
And
we've walked the river.
like you try.
Yeah.
When you're trying to catch a fish on a fly rod. So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of gratitude behind that. You know what I mean? Like you worked your ass off for that.
Yeah, we've definitely walked the river times with just around here with a trout rod and a spinner where you're like, oh, you mess up a cast. I
Yeah.
think you were with me when we walked that section of the clam. I casted over a branch and caught fish twice doing that, where the spinner was just like dipping into the water.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that could just be where we were at.
Right.
It's
yeah.
the same thing. Like, I know we bow hunt relatively close,
Mm-hmm.
but where you sit, you got a lot more stuff going on than I usually tend to have. When I'm not there, that's usually when they're there. But
Right. Of course.
it's just kind of like time. It's time and place.
right.
And when you're using a spinner, it's very easy. You're running it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You cast one spot, reel in, cast. You can cast that spot as many times as you want in, say, like a 5-minute stretch. And it's a much quicker approach. It's a much quicker
It's much more
cast to
efficient.
catch type of thing where,
Yeah.
fly, you can't get up under trees. You
Yeah, it's a huge
you gotta go
finesse
up
thing.
and drift them down
Yeah,
under. You gotta
let
let
'em-
them actually work.
But I feel like after that trip, I think it's worth our time to let the hatch kind of settle in a little bit.
Yeah.
Because when I did go with Hannah, she was like, "Oh, I took this like Orvis fly fishing class at Traverse City, whatever." And she was like, and she was kind of like essentially making me her maid in a sense. And she walked down to the water edge with me, and she goes, hand me like 3 or 4 rocks. And I said, "Excuse the fuck out of me. Like, I'm not just gonna reach down there in the water and hand you rocks." She said, "Yes, you are." So what I do? I got her some rocks.
Yeah,
I got her like 4 or 5 of them, right? And she was looking at all the larvae and stuff that's on them.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's super minuscule that can make or break your fly fishing trip that I don't think I've ever really considered.
Mm-mm.
But to like hear her do it, because I found it really odd. Because when we walked down there, I already had some flies tied on.
Right.
I had 2 of them in tandem. And she didn't have shit. And I was like, "You just gonna wait till we get down here?" She was like, "Yeah."
I'm gonna see what's
And
going
I thought
on.
she was like kidding. No, but she was actually taking it serious. Like she was figuring out what was in hatch, what of her flies she could match to what was in the water. And, she was like, "Okay, take those flies off and use this one." And she pointed to one of my fly blocks. And so I just tied it on, and that's what I caught my one rainbow trout on, was on that. But like I said, that's the one minuscule thing that can make or break your fly fishing trip. If you're just throwing flies out there to say you're fly fishing, with a fly on there, you're doing yourself an injustice.
Doing what we did the first time.
Right. Because we didn't know what was actually floating around in the water. And I'm pretty sure she said that the larvae that were on these rocks that were coming off were mayfly larvae. And so I thought that was really interesting that she was even able to identify what kind of larvae they were. So it makes me want to just look into it even more as far as, what kind of larvae and flies we have around here and approximately what time of the year they be hatching.
Well, we know it's pretty easy here, at least, to pick up when the mayflies are going. Because if you go to the gas station,
they're just
when they hatch,
everywhere.
the whole pump is covered, the ceiling's covered, everything.
Yeah.
And that's usually like you'll be at the gas pump and somebody will see it and be like, "Well, about time to go fishing," like stuff like that. But it's funny that she can identify that. That's what I went to school for. I ain't got a clue at what I'm looking at. I know the general. They're just aquatic invertebrates or aquatic.
Right. Yeah.
I spent 3 years identifying them, and if you showed me one right now, I'd be like, that's
a larva.
Is a bug.
That is a bug.
But
I thought it was really interesting too, because I had ran into a couple of guys from Misik when I was down at the bow shop, and I had noticed that they were wearing Sims like deck boots, and I was like, "Yo, I wonder if they fly fish," because Sims being what it is, it just seems like that's a river type fishing gear for waders or whatever. And so I walked up to them and I said, "Hey, you guys fly fish or what?" And they said, "Hell yeah, we do." I said, "All right, cool. I have some questions." And so, I was asking them about like what they do and everything, and I asked them about the Au Sable, and they actually told me that they've only fished it twice, but it was the best fishing that they've ever had. And they were actually stripping streamers out there, and never using like nymphs or dry flies of any kind, but they did say that their best fishing experience that they ever have had, like besides doing that, was during the hex hatch in like late June. It was like sometime in June or July, like the big mayfly hatch or whatever. And they'll go at nighttime and they'll throw dry flies and they will hammer the fucking steelhead in the manatee. That sounds like a shitload of fun because you don't have any sight. You're literally just throwing it out there and you can just listen for that off the surface of the water. And then you're just ripping line, dude.
what noise?
I hate you. I can't believe you. What noise? Yeah,
I don't know. It was that just makes me think because I hear a lot of like the same thing with like walleye fishing. I know you're not the one I've told the story now about me catching a walleye on a topwater.
Yeah.
It was the same thing.
Like walleye will eat anything.
Usually. But it was the same thing. I'm just casting. Like, I don't know. I'm using a bait caster. So I'm like getting a little bit of a nest each time or I'm stopping at 20 feet from the boat because I can't see where I'm casting. And you're just going and, if you're using a popper, you can just hear, a little pop here and there. I'm like, okay, it's working. And you just hear a whoosh of the water, a big swoosh of water, something hit, something. It's mine.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know. There could have been a anything. It could have been a bird that came down and picked it up. I just heard the water, and I'm like, sweet. This is where we just caught smallmouth.
Mm-hmm.
I got a smallmouth. And no, it was a walleye. So like I can only imagine actually doing that in the intention of catching, steelhead or trout or anything. Because like when we do trout camp,
Yeah.
trout season starts at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's when the lines go in the water. And half the time trout camp is just you're sitting
Yeah,
there
sitting around drinking, having a good time with your
drinking,
buddies.
yeah, hanging out. But when we were younger, before we could drink, and we actually took it a little more seriously, we had all the bells and everything on the
Yeah, for sure.
on our line, and you cast out with a worm. You're just floating a worm. Put the bell on there, and then you leave. You just walk away, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be. I think the earliest we had one within we had a sucker within like the first 10 minutes one time. But we've stayed up until like 3
Yeah.
and never caught a trout.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up in the morning and you throw a spinner in the same spot you're doing it and you catch a trout. It's just like I can I'm just trying to like picture not being able to see anything. You got that little faint headlamp going where you're trying to I can already like if it's dark, I'm going to watch my fly the whole time to figure out what I'm doing and then set it out there. And if it's just hammering them like they were saying, I don't know what I would do. I'd catch one fish or at least make an attempt to fish and then just like that was pretty cool. I don't care if I catch another fish.
I would love to catch more than one fish,
You
dude.
get what I'm saying though. It's just like I
I just,
always do it the beginning of bass season. The
yeah.
first time I will throw topwater. My first comment every year, I don't even want to catch a fish on the topwater right now. I just want to see something blow it up.
Yeah.
And it has worked for me every time that when I have said that, within the next 2 to 3 casts, I catch something. The last time I did it was, I believe, last spring.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I just want to see a blow up. And I popped it once, and I had a bass punch it out of the air. And I was like, I could reel in and be done. I'm happy right now. I didn't. I went right back to it. But it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah, I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. Jeez, man, the words are hard.
but I just,
I realistically just want to fight a fish like that
Yeah.
on a fly rod, dude. You know how insane that's gotta be? How tiring that's gotta be? Especially if it's like that light of an action and it being as long as it is. Dude, that's just gotta be like one of the moments like I don't know if I dare do it, but I almost want to compare it to like buck fever in that sense.
oh,
Where it's
I
like
can believe it.
you know what I mean? Like you're just shaking and just the inevitability of like, did I get him? Is he down? Is he down? You know what I mean? Like when you got him hooked, you're like, do I have him? Is he gonna get off?
I've always thought buck fever was like exclusive to deer.
Hell no.
Like, hear me out. I remember the first time I shot a deer. You're sitting there. You're just like,
Yeah.
you're dead. Are you cold? No, I'm not. It's 65 degrees outside. I'm wearing a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
It's the only camo I own. I'm not cold. I never really had it fishing for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never had it duck hunting for the longest time. And now I remember both instances of my buck fever not fishing and hunting or not deer hunting.
Yeah.
Duck hunting, if nice foggy morning, bunch of hooded mergansers come in, and I could just see them swoop, and I just saw we could just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I'm like sitting there like, all right, pick out a drake.
Pick out a
I
drake.
shot a hen.
Yeah.
And then the first time it happened fishing was this last summer when Brendan caught that like 13 and a half inch brookie. I didn't even catch the fish.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it swipe at mine, and Brendan went right to where I was at, and he's like, I was like, that fish is still in there, and I of course went right back to where I was, and I'm getting all jittery, not real serious yet, not shaking, and snagged right where we saw that fish at, and I went up and got my snag out. I was like, I don't see him anymore, and I'm like slowly walking.
Yeah.
Being slow and meticulous, and I got my snag, and I looked down, and there's just a hole like this big in the log on underneath me. And I just see that fish filled out the whole hole in the log. I'm like, it's still here. And I'm like starting to get a little
and everything because you feel like he's gonna run away when you're talking.
I'm starting to get like a little jittery, and we didn't catch it that time.
Yeah.
Next time we went was when that big rainstorm went through, and me and Brendan are like a mile downriver.
Yeah.
Crouched under a tree, waiting it out, and went up, and we're like, I think that's where that big fish was. The first Brendan cast in, first one, and I've never really heard drag scream on a trout. Mm-hmm. And he literally set the hook and I went zzz, and I went.
Yeah.
I like had to like, all right.
This is serious.
Yeah, and he started reeling it in. I'm like, sitting there like, yeah. I'm like cheering. I've never cheered for somebody to catch a fish before, and he's reeling it in. And he's like, dude, this is big. I was like, get it.
Yeah, bring it to me.
I'm seeing it fight. I'm seeing it fight in the water, and I got the net, and I'm like sitting there shaking like this, and we get it.
I'm gonna get him.
And I didn't even catch the fish. That is the first time and only time that I have remembered getting that buck fever for fishing. So now that we started fly fishing, and like the circumstances that the guy told us, it's like bow hunting. You don't do it to catch 1,000 fish a day.
Yeah, that makes me wonder. Like, are we gonna get that feeling? Like the first. I mean, don't get me wrong. That first one that I did hook when I was with Hannah, I didn't even know it was there, and I happened to have just been stripping my line to just bring it back so I cast again. And he was like, oh, sorry, like not even that big. He's probably like this big. He's probably only like 10 inches or something. Like, it was just super small. So it was just like nothing. But I also wasn't expecting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's like the shit part. And so it kind of like took away from the moment almost. But I'll tell you what though. You ever foul hook a salmon?
No.
That'll give you some buck fever real quick.
What you get for snagging?
Dude, I didn't. Dude, I was actually drifting with a bobber, okay?
Bottom bounce on a treble?
No, you dick. I was floating a bobber. It was out by Suicide Bend.
Yep.
And so we were down there, and and this was my first time realistically like actually drifting a bobber because I usually don't do that. I usually do bottom bounce, and I just got done like running a bunch of
trebles.
Why? Why do you do that, dude? Why?
It's been a while. I got to catch up on my jokes.
Oh, God. Okay. So usually I would, run these bottom bounce rigs. Well, I was floating a bobber this time. And, you kind of react to the bobber. It's more like an indicator more than anything. And so when that bobber kind of does one of these and like starts to turn, and it starts to go under, you either are hooked on something, like your hook is on something, or it's in a fish's mouth, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I set the hook on one, well, like so, because it was, falling down and tilting and whatnot. And all of a sudden, this bitch just went, and it just like took off downstream. And I'm like, dude, what is happening? And Aiden was like, yo, just take it easy. Like, because it was one of the first salmon that I had ever really like fought. And he goes, dude, just take it easy. Let him run. Let him get it out of his system, And so about halfway of like getting him back upstream is when he wasn't like facing me. Mm-hmm. Like you could see that the line was like coming off the side of his head and it wasn't in his mouth. Like it was definitely foul hooked like somewhere on this side of his face. And so he was coming at me like in this like bent shape, like, being pulled. And I'm like, dude, this is not good. He was like, yeah, you foul hooked him good. And about the time he said that, he just went back down the fucking river he went. Dude, that was the hell of a fight. But I mean, even still, like, it was just, I feel like it's just those fish that are more of like, kind of like how musky, how they say they're the fish of 1,000 casts. You know what I mean? So it's like when you catch a fish that almost has that same like connotation to it, it gets you going.
Yeah.
And I feel like just fly fishing in general has that type of connotation to it.
Right. Because like we've caught decent bass. We've seen decent bass. Can only imagine. I've never caught a steelhead or salmon or anything. The one time I went steelhead fishing and caught something, I caught like an 8-pound walleye the day before walleye opened, and I was talking to my dad about that. I had never really even targeted fish that size.
Yeah.
So it was, am I going to know when it bites? My dad's like, yeah, you're going to know when you have a fish on.
Oh, yeah.
And oddly enough, that walleye did not hit I was using like a little black fly.
Uh-huh.
The walleye didn't hit it very hard. I think he just kind of sucked it in while he was moving upriver.
Right.
Because I'm, just sitting there.
You just kind of diddle fucking yourself.
Yeah, twiddling your thumbs. And sure enough, all of a sudden I'm like sitting there and I just feel a little bit. And I was like, I think I got a fish. So I went and set the hook. And that was when it went right back down. It's like, I got a fish. I got a, in my head, salmon like this big. It's like this big around. World record.
Yeah.
First thought. I start reeling it in and it gets up. It's a walleye. Didn't expect that one.
Yeah.
But I didn't know they were in there. Mm-hmm. Never fished up there. So
you were fishing like right below the coffer, right?
We went to the DNR launch with everybody else in the state that day.
You're right.
And got that in. You could see guys you could probably see 50 guys to the right downriver starting to spread out a little more as they went. To the left, they couldn't have been farther than me and you are right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sweet. Got one. I haven't seen anybody else catch anything.
Yeah.
Got that in, took our pictures with it, put it back. I'm like, okay, mission accomplished. Like 15 minutes later, same thing happened. I did that little black fly. I feel just a little bit. And I'm like, do I have another fish? I went like this, and sure enough, right as soon as I set the hook, nice big silver fish came up out of the water and just threw it. And I was like, well, I had one.
Yeah.
And I was like dumbfounded at that. I'm like, I didn't get a little bit of a rush from that. Maybe if I caught it or I was actually fighting it, there would be some. I'm like, oh, that was cool. I haven't seen anybody else do that either. Nobody's lost a fish around me.
Yeah.
But it was just so, like, I'm picturing how I did that with a salmon rod or a steelhead rod, heavy line, leader, all this, and then you take that and just cut it in half.
Yeah.
You're using pixie sticks and twine to throw this little, just tiny, like, gram of a decimal of a unit.
And you're fighting a fish that size?
Yeah. And I'm, like, thinking about it now. Because Cade and Cole, they fly fish all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah, it's great. They're like, they dumb it down at this point.
Yeah.
Because those two river fish more.
Yeah.
Cole and those guys river fish more than anybody else I really know. Mm-hmm. And they dumb it down. So, like, I don't think anything of it at this point. Like, they said it's pretty cool, but can't be that bad. But those guys have also both, you're not allowed to target sturgeon. They have both caught one up there. And they're like, oh, yeah, it was like, that was the coolest thing ever. But just they're not, like, getting all excited and jittery and all this. But
you have to know,
both
in
of
the
them.
back of their mind, like, in the moment, they were like, dude, there's no fucking
I feel like
way.
they don't want it. Like, they don't want to admit it. Like, I peed a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm sitting there. I think Cole said he fought that fish for, like, 40 minutes.
Forever, yeah.
Before he even saw it.
Yeah.
And then they saw it and they're like, oh, that's a sturgeon. Mm-hmm. Got a picture and let it go.
Right.
But them dumbing it down, I feel like, is because before that trout last year, never thought it was possible. Fly fishing, every time I cast, and I'm like, oh, some bubbles right there. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit, like, starting to build in me every time. You threw a fly and you're like, oh, that's a good spot.
Yeah, because
we'd see a fish.
Right? Because, like, you read about it. You watch it, like, other YouTube videos about it. You're like, yo, this is what they talk about. This is that perfect scenario. And you're like, oh, I even hit that spot. You're like, this has to be. And I love it when you say that in your head and it happens. Because then you're like, it's fulfilled. I've done it. I've gone and bloody fucking done it.
See, I get a little, I haven't gotten that with fly fishing yet. Hopefully we'll get there. Where I can, like, cast and be like, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Promise you that there's a fish gonna take that and the only thing I've done that with was topwater fishing last year. Like, middle of the day, threw a spook by some weeds, went, oh, gotta be. Bang, right there. And I was just like, peak.
Yeah.
Like, it might be a 13-inch largemouth that is gonna die because it choked whatever I'm throwing,
Yeah.
and it cannot take it. But I'm thinking like,
Yeah,
I called
know
that. I called
shit.
my shot.
I know my shit.
Don't try me with nothing. But I like taking that. I'm trying to like that's so far that is the easiest thing for me to relate it to is topwater fishing.
Yeah.
Just because how much I love to topwater fish and like
Yeah, and the knowledge
okay,
you have of it,
yeah,
and being able to place it,
like
where you want.
I'm throwing last summer. I'm throwing like a 6-inch spook, 3 trebles on it. Very obvious walking it across the water. It's heavy. Tires your shoulder out after a while, but
Right.
every time something hits it, I'm like, dude, this is the only thing I'm ever going to use again. Same thing with the popper. Every time you're just like, it's great. So now I'm thinking, I'm taking that knowledge of watching a largemouth come up and hit a frog or that spook or something, and then taking it and just being like, okay, take that same thing, that same like feeling, watching something blow it up, make it a trout, make your lure this big, and make your pole feel like it's gonna snap. And I'm like, man, it does seem like it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I don't like.
And
I don't want to get corny about it because I like it's.
It's gonna happen.
It's weird, but I have a feeling that the first time I hook into something with a fly rod, I'm like, yeah,
that's cool, dude. Yeah.
It's when you walk like. It's funny that trout that Brennan caught. That's like. You don't do it often unless it's you're in a tournament.
Yeah.
It's important. Or it's like a real, like, it's a standout fish. But you don't usually look at your buddy with a fish, like, flopping on the deck. Hell yeah, and high five. That trout, me and Brendan, like, fist bumped when he caught it. Fist bumped after a picture. High fived at one point. When we released it, and we kind of just looked at each other like, that was pretty sweet.
It's a solid fish, man. Well, yeah, I think that's what we have for today.
Yeah.
So we definitely intend on fly fishing some more and seeing what we could do with that. Also with, I don't know how much you plan on doing with it, but steelhead, they're here, they're running, like it's in. So I mean, we could do some of that.
See,
and, with the weather being as it is,
I'm like
bass is starting to.
I was
pick
gonna say
up,
I'm shifting. Like I know you're gonna start focusing steelhead with it.
Yeah.
The second I can get my boat on the water, I'm taking my fly rod out.
I mean, don't mean.
And I'm my first. My first fish that I catch on a fly rod is I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna take it in panfish.
Yeah.
Where we went, where I went yesterday with Al.
Mm-hmm.
There were guys in and out of there crappie fishing.
Yeah.
Al said he watched 2 or 3 guys go up there before I got down there. And there was a guy that went in there on our way out to crappie fish. So like I'm already thinking like, dude,
we could use them fly rods for like
not
especially
a lot of,
like this time of year with the panfish and crappie being as they are.
See, this is the other thing. Not a lot of ice this year, as a whole.
Yeah.
Lot less panfish got caught through the ice.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be some spots.
Yeah.
I've already talked to Brendan and Al about it. They want to just go out. Because they live for those of them that don't know.
Yeah.
They live like a block from the lake in Chippewa.
Yeah.
We've gone out there to crappie fish before, and this is why I'm a little excited because fly fishing has kind of been like, yeah, we'll try it, we'll get started on it, and now like I've started talking about the one time I've went. Brendan went and got a rod. Now he wants to go pan fish with it.
Exactly.
Do all that stuff. So I'm sure I'm betting here before too long.
Yeah.
We're gonna be like, hey, we want to go bass fishing Saturday, but just throw the fly rod in just in case.
Yeah. So we'll definitely have some more stories and experiences
instances
with the fly rods for sure coming at you. So
yeah, I'm also I got a lot to look forward to fishing wise. I got that charter coming up in Georgia too. I plan on.
I'm going on that guided trip.
Yeah.
I'm coming Monday.
Never been on a charter fishing trip, and I'm going off of the coast of Savannah.
Nice. Well, like I said,
story for another time.
Yes, story for another time. That's what we've got for you today. So we appreciate you, tuning into Infinity Outdoors Timeless Memories, and we will catch you on the next one.
Deuces.